It was the kind of case that haunted everyone who touched it, not just the investigators, but anyone who tried to make sense of it. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, almost banal, the kind of crime that would usually follow familiar patterns. But very quickly, it became clear that this was anything but ordinary. Every rule they had relied on, time, distance, evidence, logic, collapsed the moment they tried to apply it. The more they looked, the more reality itself seemed to bend around the edges of what had occurred. The crime scene was disorienting from the start. Signs of violence were everywhere, yet there was no clear point of entry. Nothing could explain how the suspect could have been present. Witnesses offered conflicting statements. Some claimed to see the same person in two locations at once, while others swore nothing unusual had happened at all. Investigators were forced to face the impossible. How could a person be somewhere and yet not be there? How could evidence point both toward and away from a single suspect with equal conviction? Reconstruction became a nightmare. Every standard investigative procedure produced more contradictions. They mapped movements, analyzed behaviors, cross-checked statements, and examined physical evidence. Surveillance footage placed the suspect miles away at the precise moment the crime occurred. Yet the fingerprints and traces of the scene told a completely different story. It wasn't about missing information. It was about information that refused to align. Each new detail felt like it had been written to challenge every assumption investigators held. Time itself seemed to act unpredictably. Alibis were simultaneously unbreakable and impossible. Timestamps contradicted travel limits. Even the simplest cause and effect relationships felt unreliable. Events appeared disconnected from reality, as if a crime had occurred in a space where the normal rules no longer applied. The case stopped feeling like a puzzle and began to feel like a paradox, one that gnawed at the minds of even the most seasoned detectives. Theories began to multiply, each more complex than the last. Some believed it was the result of an extraordinarily precise plan, a combination of manipulation, psychological pressure, and incredible coincidence. Others argued that human perception was flawed and that investigators were simply trying to impose order on chaos. Memory, after all, is unreliable, particularly under stress. Yet even these explanations failed to fully account for the physical evidence, which seemed almost determined to contradict itself. As the story spread, public fascination grew, not because of the violence itself, but because of what the case suggested about the nature of reality. If a single crime could defy logic so completely, what did that imply about the stability of the world around us? Online communities filled with diagrams, speculative timelines, and debates. Everyone tried to force order onto chaos, but no single narrative could hold. Every explanation seemed to create new contradictions, new holes, new questions that refused to be answered. Experts weighed in from every field. Psychologists pointed to cognitive bias, memory distortion, and the strange ways stress can warp perception. Criminologists examined rare chains of coincidences that, while statistically improbable, were technically possible. Analysts argued that systemic failure, when institutions make assumptions that reality refuses to follow, was at play. Every explanation was plausible in isolation, yet none could fully contain the contradictions the case presented. The passage of time did not simplify the story. It made it more complex. What had started as an attempt to identify a suspect evolved into an investigation into the nature of truth itself. Evidence existed. Witnesses remembered vividly, yet no sequence of events could reconcile every detail without violating basic logic. What remained was not closure but a deep sense of disorientation. The case became less about guilt and more about the limits of understanding. The paradox of the situation forced everyone involved to confront uncomfortable truths. Reality is not as stable as it appears. Systems we rely on, time, memory, observation, causality, are only as strong as the assumptions they rest upon. When those assumptions fail, even events that should be straightforward can feel impossible. And once that realization sets in, it is impossible to ignore. Every detail, every witness statement, every piece of evidence becomes part of a larger question. What is real, and how much control do we truly have over it? Years later, the case is still referenced, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a lesson in uncertainty. It serves as a reminder that human understanding depends on patterns, and when a situation refuses to follow those patterns, reality itself can feel fractured. What makes it unforgettable is not simply the crime, but what it revealed about the fragility of perception. Evidence can contradict itself, memory can deceive, and the most unsettling mysteries are often not those without answers, but those with too many answers that cannot coexist. This case also left a mark on those who studied it closely. Detectives who spent years trying to piece together the truth found themselves questioning everything else they knew about how the world operates. Psychologists saw it as a demonstration of the mind's vulnerability under pressure. The public, meanwhile, became obsessed with timelines, diagrams, and the possibility that the impossible might, in fact, be real. Ultimately, the crime became a mirror, reflecting the limits of understanding back at anyone who tried to make sense of it. It proved that reality is far more fragile than most of us believe. Control is an illusion, and certainty is fleeting. Even events that seem simple can defy explanation when viewed closely enough, and the human mind is rarely equipped to accept that. And that is what makes this story endure, not the act itself, but what it teaches us. That truth can fracture, evidence can contradict itself. And sometimes the most disturbing mysteries are the ones where the answers multiply instead of clarifying. That is the story of a crime that broke more than rules. It broke the very way we try to understand the world. If stories like this make you question how fragile our sense of reality is, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story that challenges everything you think you know. Because sometimes, understanding is not about finding answers. It's about learning to live with the questions.